right, so our talk is called Shifting from We Think to We Know, 5 questions that will level up your design.
Hi, my name is Sharma Hendel. I'm a UX research director at Adobe. And as you can see from my bio, I've been at Adobe for a really, really long time, nearly 20 years. In that time, I've worked on almost every one of our creative products. So I got my start in UX research after getting a PhD in visual attention way back in the 90s. And in case you're wondering, my preferred pronouns are she, her. And if you're listening audio only, I'm a short white woman with shoulder-length brown hair, a little bit of gray, and I'm wearing black. And I had a hoodie on, which is sort of my signature, but it's a little hot in here, so I took that off. With me is my colleague, Teru.
Hi, everyone. My name is Teru Mitsuhara. You can just call me Teru. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a senior research manager at Adobe. Sharma's my boss. I'm also a linguistic anthropologist who studies creativity as well as utopian communities and world building in real life. That's not what we're here to talk about, though I'm always happy to chat about utopia. I've also conducted market research in the entertainment industry, in which I participate as a comedian in Los Angeles, which is where I live. And for audio listeners, I'm a short Black and Asian woman wearing a black shirt and green pants and heels. So enjoy.
Shifting from we think to we know. So last year at Adobe's internal design summit, we shared this idea that there were 5 critical questions that every designer could ask that would help them design faster, better, and with more confidence. After we shared these 5 questions to this room full of design professionals, we actually saw a lot of head nods and enthusiasm, which for me as a researcher was a little bit of a change from talking to that audience, because for once, I wasn't there to tell them that they needed to do better research, that they needed to hire more researchers, whatnot. In fact, I was there to acknowledge how incredibly hard it is to design a solution when you don't know who you're designing for, or you don't know why. So first off, let's take stock of who's listening to this talk today. How many of you, just raise your hand, are you in the software industry? Who's in the software industry? Awesome. How many of you are UX designers? Yeah? How about UX researchers? Any UX researchers out there? Thank you. You're my people. Do we have product managers? Any product managers? Sweet. Awesome. Yeah. And engineers? I love engineers. My husband's an engineer, so, all right. Who else? Anyone? Just shout it out. Sorry?
Oh, a psychologist.
Psychologist. I am also a psychologist. I'm a fan.
Any
all right.
psychologists? I knew it. Okay.
Maybe next time. Sorry. All right, so I'm guessing that since you're here, that you care about your customers and their experience and that you want them to be successful. And we are here because we want you to feel empowered to ask questions of yourself, of your colleagues, of your stakeholders, of your executives, and of your customers.
And what we want for you, for each of you, is to feel really confident in your assertions and your ideas, to know when you're partnering and collaborating that you're coming from a place of strength and power. And each of you, whether you're a psychologist or the non-existent anthropologists or the program managers or the product managers or engineers, designers and others that you asked about, each of you all care about creating high quality, valuable solutions for your customers. And so the aim of this talk is to share with you questions that we ask of our leadership and of our colleagues and of our partners when we work on a solution. And we believe that those questions are going to help each one of you position your work with a strong foundation and evolve your work to deliver exceptional user experiences. We're centering this talk on the foundation of knowledge, because regardless of the team that you work on, or your title or your specific disciplines, we can only deliver exceptional user experiences if we're coming from the same knowledge base. So what is the practice to deliver solid user experiences? Well, we have a proposal. We will transform our design process by leveraging, well, certainly not the lights, but here we go. We will just transform our design process by leveraging evidence. Yes, okay. That was not planned, and I'm happy for it. Let's work together, light man, whoever's doing that. All right, okay, there are 5 questions that we want each of you to walk away with so that you can be set up early on to be successful. So when you have answers to these questions, even just by asking them and by starting to think about them, you'll be able to reduce risk and get much closer to being certain that what you're working on is the right thing and that we're designing something good.
All right, so before we evaluate what makes for a good product, I want to talk a little bit about what we mean by good. Let's take a look at some examples where perhaps some evidence could have been a power transformational force to change the direction of a design, or with evidence, we could more confidently articulate what the purpose of our work was. So for starters, let's look at a product that many of us use every day. All right, perhaps not every day, but I hope most of you would agree that an easy-to-use clothes dryer is a pretty important part of your household. A typical clothes dryer will have a broad audience with varying levels of technical proficiency. Depending upon the location, it may be used regularly by 1 or 2 people, or it may be in like a short-term rental where it needs to be serving many people. And it's probably going to be a situation where you need it to be easy to figure out without reading a manual or downloading an app.
Well, actually in my house, we don't have a dryer. We hang dry because we live in LA and there's the sun. How many hang dryers do we have in here? Oh my God. Okay, thank you. Okay, that's fun.
All right, well, in that case, we're going to have to look at my dryer because, Tara, I live in Oakland. We have sun too, but I like my dryer. I love my dryer. In fact, I love this dryer so much. And yet there are things that keep me puzzled. You can see from some of the settings here, they're intended to make a quick click experience. While they are indeed quick, there's nothing to indicate the temperature of the different presets or the drying time. You just choose based on these categories: delicates, bed linens, dress shirts, and so on. It does seem easy, but, it doesn't really work with the way my brain works. Like, I'm stuffing in this load of towels, which is a pretty common use case. Which option do I choose? Would that be denims? Because towels are kind of heavy, aren't they? Or woolens and silks? Or maybe it's the normal setting. Maybe that's what normal is for. I'm not clear. It makes one wonder, who was this designed for? And why these use cases? And why not other use cases? One of my design colleagues noted that one of the biggest challenges with these particular settings is it doesn't take into account the instructions that come with people's clothes, like dry on low temp, no heat, and so on. While this may seem like a simple dryer, it doesn't actually map onto the way my clothes work. So maybe if your clothes tag says rotary iron only, you are in luck. But for many of us who don't actually know what that means, the users of this device, these presets do not match the way we think about drying our clothes. So maybe the team working on this dryer stopped a little short in their evidence gathering. Or maybe their dryer wasn't designed for a US-based audience, and this is actually just a localization problem. These are all possibilities, but with a little more evidence, we might have seen something different come from the team. Evidence helps you have confidence that you're solving a real user problem, that your solution aligns with how your users think about that problem. So, I'm not gonna lie, I still really love this dryer, and I bought it, so I've taken the time to figure out how it works and adjust to it. But not all products are given the benefit of the doubt by customers, and the consequence can be a new idea that crashes and burns in the marketplace. So let's talk about smart glasses. The idea behind these, originally conceived of about 10 years ago, were clever wearable devices with built-in cameras for experience augmentation. The industry's first pair came to the market in 2014, but they were gone from the market a year later. Some people had imagined this future where everyone was going to wear these futuristic devices almost like fashion pieces. But the reality was that most people weren't into it.
Because they're ugly.
There were immediate concerns about safety, like what if you have these on while you're driving, right? And privacy, like what are you recording? Wait, are you recording? I am, they are. Yeah. This led some establishments to ban smart glasses before they were even available online. And you know what, that $1,500 price point? Whew, Yeah, not especially consumer friendly.
No, and it begs the question, like, who were they actually designing it for, and what was the problem that they were trying to solve? It's not evident.
So sometimes in the world of tech, we design for problems people don't even know they have yet. But if we're not solving for known user problems, what evidence do we have that our ideas are good ones? That the customers will find our technology interesting, that it taps into something that's really relevant to real people. Even if we don't know the answers, it's still vitally important to ask the question. Just by saying it out loud, you shift the mindset from building technology to creating something human. Well, you know where this story goes. Eventually someone comes along, perhaps with a more customer-focused mindset, certainly with a more fashion-focused mindset, and they build a better horse. Building products that people need, that people want, is crucial when you're making new technology. And no, that does not mean asking people what they want. Rather, it means understanding what they want, what will resonate, what will make them feel good when they use it. Sometimes a product comes along that captures people's hearts, even if it doesn't solve a problem very well. It may just make users feel good, even if it's not very usable. Which brings us to the ever-popular Philippe Starck juicer. Any of you out there have one of these at home? Anyone? Couple of you? Yeah? Has anyone used one? No? You never used one before? None of you have ever used one. Well, today is your lucky day because I have one here. I have one. Yep, I do. I have it in my little Southwest bag. They gave me a bag. I have this here, right? And I have a lemon tree in my backyard. And I brought, all the way from Oakland, California, lemons, and there's some limes in there too. And I would love to see someone who's never used this juicer, please just come down and give
Who wants to help? Put a hand up. If you don't put a hand up, I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna find you anyway. Oh, we got the front row. You're already so vulnerable right here in the front. Don't pretend you didn't put your hand up. Come on. All right, what's your name?
Annabelle.
Can we give Annabelle a round of applause? She's brave.
Thank you so much.
She didn't know that if she sat in the front row, there was a comedian on stage. Come on. All right, you're talking with you. Well, we'll do it right here. What do you do? You got these ingredients. Oh wow, she put it over. Oh, I'm gonna vocalize for people in the back what you're doing. Then she's putting a lemon
process, people
on top. Okay. Oh, what was that? What'd you say?
No.
Oh, she didn't want. Can I say what you said? She said, "Oh fuck." Why'd you say that? Why'd you say that? What happened?
Because I'm making a mess in the table.
You can't see it, but there's drops of lemon everywhere. It's a travesty for the table, for the cleanup crew. But she's going. She's
I brought
committed.
this one in case you wanted to try that one out instead.
I used that one.
Yeah.
I used this one in my house.
Yeah, you want to show us how that one works?
Sure.
Yeah.
For the audio listeners.
It's really expensive.
It is indeed really expensive.
I don't know. It's heavy and it has a nice design, but I don't know.
Let's just sit with that there. All right, and then for the audio listeners and those in the back, she quickly put the lemon in there. She squeezed it, and there was no expletive. No expletive. All right, and then we have hand wipes for you so you're not sticky. Let's give a round of applause to Annabelle. But real quick,
That's awesome.
Real quick, I did want to ask one question. Between the two, well, actually, we know the answer. What would you use?
Obviously this one.
Okay. Is it because you already have it?
No, because it fits perfect in my drawing.
Oh, okay.
And it's easy to use, and this looks like a space shit. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. This is wonderful. Thank you. Let's give another round of applause to Annabelle. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So that was awesome, and we really appreciate you doing that. And I did promise some folks that I was talking to earlier, I'll leave this up. If you've never used it, you want to have a chance. It is actually quite a treat to use it for the first time ever. The thing about this juicer is it was never actually intended to make juice. It was designed by Starck to be a conversation piece. And we just had a whole section of our talk talking about it, so clearly it's working. I've had this one for about 25 years, and it really works well to capture people's attention, which is awesome, but not so great as a juicer. Which leads us to the question, is this good design? If we think about, now I feel like somebody's gonna strike me down if I say this, but if we feel like good is the marriage of form and function, it requires us to understand that function is relative to the user's needs. The juicer is without a doubt a beautiful design that rethinks a rather uninteresting form and makes it special, but at a cost. It has become far less functional. We've traded form for function, which is a trade-off that can have a pretty negative impact on a product. While the juicer succeeds in being a provocative statement on design and function, it is not the best for making juice.
Yeah, and you know what, it makes sense, okay? It's there for conversation, and I can appreciate that. I can. The beauty and the innovation there, I see that as well. But in the end, you know, as a member of a product design team, as someone, you know, we're all here to make products that are to be used by real people, like Annabelle, like all of us, who have real needs to make juice and other things, right? And we're here to make products that will ultimately lead to a commercially, we're here to build experiences that will lead a commercially viable product, right? And with that in mind, I'd really say that the Juicy Salif is just not, it's not a good juicer. No.
Yeah, no, we haven't been stricken down for saying that yet. Mm-mm. It is beautiful. It is. So let's recap here. Clothes dryers, broad audience, lots of different potential use cases, which means delivering a simple solution, but it has to meet your audience where they're at. Smart glasses, lots of functions, many functions, so many functions. But having many functions doesn't necessarily mean your customers are gonna feel comfortable. Are those functions better served with a smartphone, which maybe is a little less creepy, easier to use, and probably already in your back pocket? And finally, Juicy Salif, without a doubt a beautiful design, but if you want to deliver a successful solution, make sure that your product actually does what it's supposed to do and does it well. So what would make each of these products better address their markets? So this is why we're here, evidence. Evidence to support the breadth of your audience, evidence to understand their unmet needs and motivations, evidence to evaluate the usability and experience of the product you're making.
All right, Sharma, but evidence, it can come in a lot of different forms, right? Do opinions count as evidence? We hear that as researchers. Can I look for quotes on X? Can I look for quotes on Facebook? Do those count? What about user voice? Or what about finding people clandestinely on the street in South by Southwest? Surely that counts, right? Right? That's a random sample, people coming from all over. Well, and sometimes we just have to move really, really fast. So, you know, kind of all of those things could feel like evidence.
Well, asking friends and relatives what they think about something isn't really evidence.
It's not, I'm sorry.
It can lead to evidence, but it's not inherently evidence. The short answer here is that they may all be data points, but none of them really is evidence. Why? Because evidence is about identifying what we know and what we think, and then systematically gathering information to determine if what we think is actually true. Presenting design concepts from a position of strength means having evidence to support that your idea is good, that it has a clearly identifiable audience, and that it solves a real need. By systematically gathering evidence, it enables you to predict how people will act when they use your product. This may seem complicated, but it really all just starts with having a good idea.
Which is also known as a hypothesis. It's exciting, we love it, but no. Your hypothesis, no matter how brilliant it is, it's also not evidence. All right, any design idea, it's a hypothesis, which you need. It's super important in the process, but you have to gather evidence to support your hypothesis, and then doing so will enable you to design from a position of confidence. I'm seeing head nods from the researchers. I already know that you're my people, okay? Okay, got it. All right, because if you have that evidence, then you're going to design from a position of confidence. And as you start thinking about the evidence that you need to have your success, that alone is going to transform the way you think about design. And so then that takes us finally to the purpose of the talk, those 5 questions you've been waiting for. All right, these are the 5 questions that we should all be asking to ensure that our ideas are good, well supported, and likely to be successful. And we believe that once you start asking these questions, it'll transform the way you think about your own ideas and the future of the products you're building.
All right, so our first question, how do we know we're building for the right user? Have you ever asked your product team, hey, who are we building this for? Let me guess. You get one of 2 responses. A hyper-constructed persona, Mary the marketer.
It's my favorite.
Yeah, she represents who we want to target, but she's not actually a real person. Or my other favorite, this product is for everyone. Everyone's gonna love it. It is so frustrating when we can't clearly state who we're targeting and how that user is defined. Yes, if you make a great product, you're gonna get lots of customers from lots of walks of life, but it's really hard to design a new product if you don't have some way to scope the project. Don't be afraid to ask the question. And when you do, watch out for overly broad and poorly defined audiences, because if you don't define your audience clearly, it's going to be really hard to talk to the right customers, and you might end up kind of trying to boil the ocean. I'm also suspect of cases where we don't actually know who our product is for. We're just looking for product market fit. We think it's a cool idea. We're sure someone's gonna like it. This is a super weak position to be in. How will we know when the product's ready to ship? How will we market it? To whom? And what checks and balances are in place in case we find out we really need to pivot? Having cool tech is a great hypothesis to start from, but it's just the beginning. Look for evidence instead where there's a clear and defined market. This can be through quantitative audience sizing studies or segmentations, so you know you're targeting an idea that has an actual sizable audience of people with real needs. If you don't have that, or even if you do, review some strategic market research to understand what the real market opportunities are, so you know you're not just chasing after a unicorn. Ask for specific evidence-based descriptions of the target users. That is, descriptions of users that are based on real people with real workflows. Use evidence to align your team so that you're all building towards the same audience, the same target. When the target audience isn't clearly defined, sometimes teams fall into this trap where everyone's thinking about a different user and you end up getting pulled in a whole bunch of different directions. And don't be afraid to ask for business justification for pursuing a specific audience. It will make your concepts better and ultimately help your business.
And question number 2, how do we know that we're designing for real use cases? Look, I think we'd all agree that it's virtually impossible to do our work without knowing what users want or hope to do with our software. And this means understanding the nuances of workflows and use cases, the edges and the creases, and not just the surface, right? We have to drive for clarity always. So here's a model that we see stakeholders use to create imagined use cases all the time. So here's something we're seeing actually quite a lot these days that just help outline use cases. And while the intention is really, really good, beware of oversimplification here. So how many of you know this simple framework? As a user, I want to do X, so I can Y. Yeah. Well, it's a simple fill in the blank, but as so often happens, those blanks don't represent what real users would say or even what they need. So Sharma, can you give me an example of where you've seen this?
Yeah, we definitely see this a lot. So one time, a while back, I saw this one. As a user, I want to see all of my apps in one place so that I can get the most value out of my subscription. So, I'm not gonna lie, I have never heard a user say that before, and I don't actually think users talk that way. This statement showed up in a product deck one day, and while it bears some resemblance to a real user need that we'd heard about, it kind of took a right turn. We learned from customer surveys that our users thought that their subscription was pretty expensive and it had more in it than they needed. Okay? This is a user-focused problem. But the PM took what was a user-focused problem, this is expensive and I don't know if I'm getting enough value, and turned it into a business-focused solution. We should show the user everything they're getting for their money so they'll feel better. They'll feel like they're getting more bang for their buck. The PM solution doesn't actually solve the user's problem. Perhaps the product team could have spent a little bit of time understanding the user's perspective to know whether they needed to spend more time encouraging users to use more products in their subscription, or perhaps they needed an easier way to downgrade to a less expensive subscription.
So you see, it's really important to take that moment and ask for evidence and to think critically about how we're using evidence to frame and narrativize problem spaces, because I think some of you, when you make that PM statement, there's nothing really wrong with it except that there's no evidence to back it up, and then they reframed it. Was that part clear? Okay. So here's an alternative Mad Lib structure that'll make that easier for you in the future. All right, we know that this audience is trying what you're trying to do, or you say we know this audience is trying to or needs to do blank. And we know this audience struggles with, ABC. And we know this because No, evidence. There we go. He got me. All right. Okay, round of applause for you. That's great for you. Thank you. All right, we know this because of evidence, okay? And this format, it's a small shift, but it will actually help to your team ground the use case work that you're doing in evidence, which will make it stronger. So of course, you might be in a situation where you don't have evidence for the use cases yet, but you're eventually going to need to stress test what you're doing with actual customers to see if it holds up. And look, both of these situations are okay. You just need to be honest about where you are, where your team is in the process, and call that out.
All right, question number 3. Are we designing for unmet needs? Do users have unmet needs that will be addressed by our solution? Are we giving users a reason to choose our product? If their needs are currently being fulfilled by a competitor app, how do we plan on differentiating ourselves? When we ask product teams why we're designing the specific features or workflows, we sometimes hear a couple of things. One is our competition is doing it. Yeah? So we have to do it because they're doing it. Or this feature is important because it's a key differentiator. Or this idea is so cool, people will realize they want it.
Like with the glasses, remember?
Yeah, cool glasses. Ultimately though, if your product doesn't tap into something that is important to your users, they're not gonna use it. That seems like a really obvious thing to say, and yet, here I am saying it. And if someone else is doing it better, then you're not actually solving an unmet need. And just because a competitor is doing it, that does not mean their users are using it. I see a lot of features and capabilities and design patterns being repeated simply because other companies are doing it. But that does not make them good. Wouldn't it be better to gather some evidence before committing to them? It does remind me of a recent situation where I asked my product team why we were doing this brand new purchase model. It seemed really confusing to me, and I was fairly certain that our users weren't going to understand it. The answer I got was because the competitor is doing it. Sure enough, before we launched it, the competitor in question switched to a new model. I'm guessing that it wasn't as successful for them as they had hoped. And, we had to quickly pivot. Thankfully, there was time, we hadn't launched yet. We had to quickly pivot and figure something else out, but it just points out the dangers of assuming that just because someone else is doing it, that it's actually working. So let's talk about differentiators. Everyone loves to talk about differentiators. What are the reasons you're giving your customers to use your product over another one? Have you built out an amazing feature that you're sure your customers will love? Guess what? That awesome new feature is only a differentiator if it makes your customers' lives better. How can you know which of your features your customers will find compelling? So moving from we think to we know means listening to customers. Find out what the most frustrating parts of their job are by watching them work. Notice I didn't put talking to customers here or showing them a demo, Because the best way to find out about what real people need is to listen. And then conduct an analysis, like a gap analysis, which is really just a fancy way of saying, this is what my product can do, this is what my customers' needs are, where are the gaps between them? I also suggest doing product teardowns or walkthroughs. So again, have you seen that snazzy demo for that new workflow in that favorite app of yours, and then you went and tried it out, and oh my God, it left you so frustrated and unsatisfied?
Like the juicy Salif.
Yeah. It's gonna be amazing. Not amazing. Yeah, because demos are really pretty on stage, but they're designed to showcase the best case scenario. Do a walkthrough on your own or a teardown of the feature and spend some time thinking about what would really make it work. Even better, give it to some of your customers and watch them use it and see where they stumble. And then this is just my cautionary tale. In this age of AI everything, it's really important to keep the focus on the customer and their needs. Just because something is made with AI doesn't make it good. In fact, if your solution solves the customer's problems and makes it easier for them to do what they're trying to do, it doesn't matter if it's made from AI or 2 tin cans and a piece of string. What matters is that it works.
Question 4. Will our solution work, like actually work for our customers? So once you're clear on the problem that you're trying to solve, what evidence do you have that your design or your solution will solve their problem or will work for them? How do you plan to determine whether this solution is a good solution? So this is probably the one that we're most familiar with. My team loves this idea. Good, yay, great, okay. So now while we may start with a hypothesis that everyone thinks is good, remember that good is in the eye of the beholder, okay? It's contextual. And so for us, and our users are the ones who will decide if we're making something good based on if it actually works for them. Like what we saw with Annabelle, she's not gonna switch her juicer. No, it didn't work for her, it wasn't good for her, right? So it's a fun, cool design, and it's nice, and we love this idea, but no, we saw it and it failed. Okay, so let's also be mindful of the awesome customer stories that we create to share our ideas and our proposed solutions with stakeholders. Look, customer narratives, they are a really nice way to draw your audience in, to make them care, but you have to be careful. Because if you're not using real stories, you might spark a risky scenario. Your stakeholders will then hear your story, the customer story that you made, and then be like, all right, great, I love it. Just go forth, build it, sounds amazing. Only to find that when a real customer sees it or uses it, it's just not the big hit that you claimed it would be. And that's not great. So instead, find ways to connect with your customers when you can. You can do cognitive walkthroughs. You can do unmoderated studies, concept testing. All right, these are all good ways to determine if your solution is going to work for your user. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. Make it clear in all the things that you're doing and sharing, and just be mindful, is there evidence to support these hypotheses? Or is your idea still in its infancy stage? And don't be afraid about being honest about the phase that you're in.
And speaking of being honest with ourselves, one of the most challenging points of self-reflection is, are we the right people to solve this problem? Yes, that means you personally, but also your team. Is it the right team? Is this the right product area for you? Is your company the right company? So I work for Adobe, and Adobe is known for quite a few things. If you want a PDF, we're probably somebody you're going to consider for that. You want something creative, we're a pretty big name there. You want next level marketing software, we also make that. But there are also things that Adobe does not do. And while I could stand up here and list all the things that Adobe is maybe not good at, I like my job and I don't really want to lose it, so I'm not going to do that. The fact still remains, we're better off when we play to our strengths. That doesn't mean we shouldn't try new things, that we shouldn't innovate. But if we do, we need to consider what would it take for us to be successful. So ask yourself, what would have to be true about our team, about our company, or even about the world for us to design, deliver, and maintain a successful solution? So what would have to be true is a great little tool to help you break down your company's capacity to actually deliver a successful solution. What would have to be true about your customers and their needs? We've kind of covered how you could figure that out. What would have to be true about technology? And more importantly, what would have to be true about your company's technology? And what would have to be true about the world? The world changes a lot. So we saw huge and rapid shifts in software use during the pandemic, some of which sustainably changed usage patterns and unmet needs forever. This is an opportunity for you to be really honest with yourself about your ideas, even if it's just in the privacy of your own office, and consider the risks that you're facing. So even if you feel like your idea is viable, you still have to ask yourself, does this play to my company's strengths?
That actually reminds me of when Colgate in the 90s, the toothpaste company, when they decided to launch a line of frozen dinners. Yeah, we are laughing because that's a ridiculous idea, but they put money and energy into it. So like Colgate beef lasagna. That's so delicious sounding, right? No, right? So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's important. I mean, you guys know immediately that something's wrong there. It's important for your offering to make sense coming from your company. If not, you may have a really hard time marketing it to your audience, and that doesn't matter how cool your idea was.
Or bad, or how bad your idea is.
And lastly, does your company have the infrastructure to support a successful offering? Even if you have the right team, the right skill set, a cool idea, do you have the infrastructure in place already to bring this idea to life? Would you need a massive data center, a full-scale shipping operation, a content management team? Consider whether building out the product that you want to is viable given all of those needs.
So you guys get it, all right? It's about asking questions, and it's about asking them until you get solid, factual answers. Be curious, be detailed, because you never know what might shape your design, what detail is going to unlock the greatness in your work. Now, I know some of you are thinking, cool, Taru and Sharma, whatever, we don't have that much time to ask questions, let alone get answers. We are asked, or rather we're told, go do, go design, go build, and do all these number of things and do them fast. And because we're, highly capable, this group is highly capable and highly skilled, and we all care, and because we all have great ideas, because, right? We just hurry, oftentimes we hurry along and we go do those things. But that approach isn't necessarily making things better. So take a moment and take stock of what we already know, reach across the silos, reach across to other teams, and find out what they know. And think of it instead of like wasting time or I don't have time to do this. Think of it instead as it's part of the design process. Gathering evidence is not going slow or slowing things down. It's an investment. It's an investment in you're investing your time to ensure that your foundation is evidence-based. And doing so will reduce thrash. It will save you and your company time and resources across the board. And so what are we asking you to do? Well, we're asking you as a team, we need you to build these questions into your practice. Don't assume that the person telling you to do something has evidence. Because I just want to note here that sometimes the hypotheses are stated with such confidence that it just feels wrong to ask for the data. But you have every right to ask. Hey, tell me more about this. What information helped shape this direction? And just see what is said. And if you get information, great, that might be a design detail that you get from that. And if they say nothing, opportunity to find that evidence, okay? Because this is really part of your job, In fact, everyone has the responsibility to ask questions. And if you feel that you can make the best design from having the answers to those questions, then you should feel empowered to ask for what you need. Because we're not here to tell you, oh, you're wrong. We're here to, none of that. We're here to reach across disciplines, encourage you to design with the answers to these questions, because the best design goes from having the best knowledge. So definitely ask your teams those questions. I hope you screenshotted them. Give yourself, give your team a chance to approach the problem with evidence as your foundation, because there's strength in knowing the who and the what and the why. And it might actually help free you to explore directions that you never considered before. Did you guys see how the light went down right when I said that? All right, so take time for the conversations, hold each other accountable, and then set your curiosities free.
All right, so we're here to wrap up this discussion. We want to leave these 5 questions for you with them in your back pocket. Anyone on your product team can and should be asking these questions all the time. If you feel like you need some help answering these questions, there are lots of possibilities. You can ask a researcher if your company has one. There's apparently a ghost in this room. They may also be able to help you. You may want to upskill your own research capabilities, and if you do, there's a QR code over here. It's a link to some resources that can help you learn your own research techniques. And we're also here for, I don't know, I have no idea what time it is, but whatever the time it is until they kick us out, we'll probably be here for a little bit. Happy to answer questions for you.
Yeah, so please stay in touch. These QR codes link out to our LinkedIn, so please, reach out. Thank you so much. Any questions, comments? Yeah.
How do you, I'm sure you've dealt with pushback on this idea from members of, thank you. Hi, Lee Bretschneider, Florida Center for Interactive Media. I'm sure you've encountered some pushback on the evidence idea from people with mindsets of move fast and break things. How do you sell this idea to those people?
Well, I mean, the thing that I would start with is to say you can move fast and you can break things, but you don't know that you can put them back together again. If you launch a solution that isn't right for your customer, you may never get that customer back. What I would say is that it doesn't actually take that long to gather evidence if you do it systematically and thoughtfully, and if you collaborate with people who know how to get the evidence. To be honest, building something that breaks and then turning around and saying, oh, no, I'm going to do it different, you lose trust. And I'm a big believer in making sure that my audience trusts me. So that's what I would say.
I agree with that. I think sometimes, well, I don't know, I hope Adobe doesn't watch this. Sometimes you have to let your partners fail, because if they keep pushing back with that logic of like, no, I'm going to just do it. We're going to move fast. And at some point, you kind of have to be like, okay, go ahead. And you have to have a little bit of that energy. And then they do fail, because if you don't have evidence, if you don't have the reasons of the who and the what, and you're like, I don't know why all this, like, the customers aren't using it. They're not clicking on this thing. And they run to the research team often because leadership is telling them, like, why? You gave us those awesome customer stories. Well, aren't those real people? Like, this is supposed to be what's happening. And then they're in trouble. And eventually they realize that they can mitigate those conversations, the responsibility for the failures, because what they rather be responsible for is the success. And if you partner with people who know how to help build your success with that foundation of knowledge, like, let's just take a look at this one, you will build a house that doesn't break. So sometimes you let them fail.
Hi. In the customer survey learning example that you shared about the users saying the Adobe sub was pretty expensive and had more in it than they needed, you mentioned that the issue at hand was a user problem, and the PM should have thought through solutions from the user perspective, more so from a product perspective. And I was wondering how, as a broader team, you manage through the balance of the trade-offs between offering a downgrade button and that potentially costing, the business or the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. So how do you handle the business impact and what the customer wants?
So first off, I will say that example is from a long time ago, and I did not at any point say that that example happened at Adobe. Just in case. But given that I've been at Adobe for 20 years, I'm probably going to have a hard time talking about it. In any case, look, we're here to find the balance between what is good for the user and good for the customer. And the best thing is if you're doing it right, it's not an either or. There are times in which what is good for the customer is good for the business, and what is good for the business is good for the customer. We need to focus on those times, right? So if a customer is unhappy with what they've got from your company, and it's bad for business for them to, downgrade or quit, the question is really which is worse for business, downgrade or quit? Because they're not going to stay around. So what I would say is all of what we try and do is to say, here's what's good for the business. Here's what's good for the customer. Where can we find the sweet spot where something that's great for that customer is also going to be good for business?
All right, so early on, you were talking about trying to understand what customers need rather than ask what they need. I'm wondering if you can actually just unpack that a little bit, because I know there are all sorts of tripwires in there.
I used to ask a question in my discussion guides as a researcher, where, and I still ask it. Oh, if you had $1 million, PMs actually hate this question because they're like, we're not wish list givers, we're not genies. But I would say, if you had $1 million, what would you want us to build for you? I asked that question, and then I had to explain to the PM, because she was like, we're not genies, we're not we can't do those things. And I was like, what was helpful for me is if someone says what they tell me what they need and what they would want, what they would invent, this wild thing, I can get to figuring out a little more closely what the problem is. What's the sand in their oyster? And then we're gonna make that a pearl. So sometimes if you understand, I'll give you a very different example that's nothing to do with design. But if someone were to go to somebody and ask, like, what would you need to make your life a whole lot better? And if someone says, if I could just have $400,000, things would be better. Well, it tells me if I don't have the capacity to give them $400,000, but I understand now that money is an issue for this person. There are other people where money is not an issue for them. They would say other things, like, I really wish someone would hug me. I'm like, oh, love. Okay? Like, you can figure it out. People will tell you what they want, and then you can understand what they need, like what the real ask is, with the underlying driver for them, and that motivation is what you can then pull into ideas.
So the thing is that if you just ask people, what features do you want me to build?
Yeah.
They're gonna tell you some stuff. They're gonna tell you some stuff that is actually probably them trying to be a designer in their own head. Guess what? Most of our customers are not very good designers. That's not true if you work on Illustrator, I realize that. But for the most part, people are good at telling you what they want as a way of telling you what's broken. But if you take that and that's your answer, you haven't done the work. The work is understanding why that person is asking for that thing. Right? So yes, people say, hey, I want my thing to be cheaper, or I want I want this to have more content, or I want it to, but you look underneath, it's like this person's asking, this happens all the time. The person asks for a feature and the product manager will literally interrupt me, and they don't do this anymore because I have a stern face. They will interrupt me and be like, oh, no, it can do that. Let me show you how. And I'm like, you bozo, get the hell out. Because here's the thing, the customer is talking about their feelings in the form of talking about the features they want. You have to understand their feelings. That's going to open up the opportunity for great design that is emotional, that is
human, it's connected.
Exactly.
It has longevity.
Or you could make the feature they asked for, and since they weren't a designer in the first place, it's probably a shitty feature and nobody's going to be happy with it.
Yeah.
So I was really curious, like, where in the product lifecycle would it be best to kind of raise these questions? And if it's pertinent to have all these questions really answered all at one time, or can you break them up into different parts throughout the design lifecycle?
The earlier, the better. The earlier, the better.
But let's point out, it's the asking that's important. You won't have answers at the beginning. You don't need to have answers at the beginning. I never want to say, and I'm right here in the room as a design director who I've worked with for many years and who knows what a pain in the butt I am. I'm asking the questions, and we may not have the answers yet. And he's fond of saying, we'll get there. And you know what? We will. We just have to ask the questions. Because knowing that we expect to find out the answers to these questions makes us all think about how important these questions are.
It also might open up space on if their team doesn't have these answers yet, but you ask the questions, now they're thinking about it, it creates space for the answer. They might also then create space to invest in the time to figure those things out. They might not just go full steam ahead and then it breaks and everyone's surprised. You know, there will maybe build in opportunities to find those, to apply the answers, to create an iterative process as they get the answers. So it creates a structure for, iterative design.
So is it pertinent to have all these questions answered at the same time, or
it's going to be impossible, and they're going to be answered iteratively, right, as we go. It's okay to say, I have this cool idea, I wonder if anyone will like it. That's a super fine place to be, but you don't want to be there when you're shipping.
Right.
You know, you want to be there at the beginning. And if you bring along someone whose job it is to go learn the answers to these questions, and it's different people's jobs too, right? Like, I don't do segmentation research. I got a guy that I work with, and I'm like, hey, we need segmentation research. And he's like, this is what I got, you know? So different people, but if you bring in the folks who are tasked with going and getting that information, or going to executives and saying, wow, you picked this audience for us to go after. I don't really know why. Will you tell me why? I want to understand it. Oh, you showed me a bunch of data, but I'm going to interpret that data a little differently. When we interpret it that way, do we still have the same audience? These questions should be brought out all the time, throughout the whole. I mean, my favorite question in any design review or any meeting is, what problem are we trying to solve? Like, if that's the only question you ever ask, that's probably the most important thing, because it at the core, all of those other questions come out.
Hi, you alluded to your relationship with product management. There's like pros and cons. Can you speak to like the ideal relationship between, you know, design and product management, and sort of who does what, and how do you get to the best end result for both the business and the user?
I love when product managers bring me in early, or bring my team in early and let me know that if they even, okay. You asked for ideal, so I don't want to shame anyone here if this is not the thing that you're doing. We'll just take it as a learning opportunity, or maybe push back and ask some questions and share with me limitations in your space as to why maybe that's something you can't do. But what I love ideally is when a product manager brings me a list of questions. It can be I get a sense visually in front of me of the stuff they're trying to do, the problem they're trying to solve. They have a sense already that any part of those questions are things they should be thinking about as a product manager, and they set up a meeting time with me and are like, okay, Teru, this is what I need to do, and this is the stuff that I'm thinking about. I've just Slacked you the document. Can we look through that together, and can you tell me if we have any information already around this? And so now they've given me an anchor piece, or some meat to chew on, rather, and now we can have a conversation, and I can now know it in my library, either myself or my team. We can pull things, we can set up briefing docs, now we have somewhere to go. It's really, really nice. There's probably more to the ideal, but that would be amazing. The not ideal part is if someone tells you right at the end, we're shipping, can you validate that this is a good idea? And it's done. And we're like, well, no, it's a bad idea. And that's too late, and now you're the bad guy, and yeah.
So I will say, for many years, I've told people that I see my role in the product as being the marriage therapist between the and the product team, right? The product team doesn't understand what the hell the customer is saying. The customer doesn't understand why the product team is doing the thing they are doing. And I'm pretty good at reading customers and understanding what's underneath what they're saying. I'm also really good at reading product teams and understanding what's underneath what they're saying. So for me, the ideal relationship is to be in the room. I don't need to necessarily be offering an opinion in the room, although anyone who knows me knows that I probably will. But just hearing the conversation when you're talking to your developer who's saying, I can't build it that way. That's not how, bits and bobs work. That's not going to happen. Or if I'm talking to a designer who says, look, this is really important from a consistency standpoint, and this is going to help our brand. Or if I'm talking, I'm taking in all of that information, as is a product manager, because their job is a synthesis role. Their job is that understanding all the things. Well, there's going to be things that are unknown. And I'm really good at going and figuring out those unknowns. So that's the relationship that I want. I have had amazing relationships with product managers. Hopefully they all have left been like, that was awesome. I want Sharma around whenever we're doing stuff. I have also had contentious relationships with product teams. And often I think it's when I'm sitting there saying like, hey, but I don't think that that's actually true. I think you just made that up. And they're like, piss off, right? Don't say that out loud. So that's my perfect relationship.
Thank
An
you.
open mind, I think, would help with as like a cover for that. So if someone is asking questions, to not be hurt and take that personal. That's also a really crucial ingredient. Is like someone asking, who are you building it for? Can I come to the meeting? Those answers should be fine.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Stefan Deuchler, I'm a UX researcher. You touched on it a little bit. I just want to ask that question again. I work for a medium-sized software company, and you both work for a really large company, and you've worked there for a while. But how do you show the value of UX research? Sharma is smiling.
I'm smiling because that's been
it's
my
pushback that we're getting all the time. Is like, how do you show the value to the business? How designers are asked, hey, just put your prototype on user testing and get a few people
and learn some garbage. So so the best way to show value of UX research, I think, is if you can use numbers. And that's very hard to do. I did an experiment recently. So A/B testing is really popular amongst people. So I decided to do a little experiment. So I said, we have a team that works with the group that's doing a bunch of growth PLG A/B testing. I was like, I want us to record all of our recommendations and hypotheses and all the ones that didn't come from us or didn't come from our research. And I want to look at the success. Now, I am not showing a slide on this because I have not published any of this stuff yet, but we found that if you worked with a UX researcher, you were more than twice as likely to have a successful outcome. If you had an evidence-based actual problem statement, you were 3 times more likely to have a successful outcome. So I have proof that UX research makes for better outcomes. Whether anyone wants to hear that proof, I don't know. Maybe I'll be here next year and talk about that. In the meantime, since we can't A/B test anything, in fact, we can't A/B test most things. Most of the things we A/B test are going to be trivial, so it's really hard to get excited about that. My team makes a concerted effort, thank you, Taro, for leading the charge on this, of whenever we do a project, we ask, what is the business decisions, what is the business purpose of doing this study? And we understand what KPIs we are trying to affect with this study, with whatever knowledge that we get from this study. And then we track it and we look at our KPIs. And if the product team is successful in moving those KPIs, I'm assuming that that's my team's success. And I will talk about that as my team's success. And I make every single person on my team do that quarterly. That gets uploaded into our back-end systems so that we can track and they can tell you how they have changed the product for the better. That's what we do.
That's a huge part of it. We only have, I think, a minute left. And so I will also say that I've worked on really, really small teams before I came to Adobe. And one of the most impactful ways that we would package up stories I worked for a firm that had like 8 people in it, so it was really, really small, no, not even the size that you're at. And it was a lot of the storytelling. We spent a lot of energy creating a lot of decks that were beautiful, that were emotional, and that would help them understand something they couldn't have done by themselves. So it was one of those things where we had to kind of we spent a lot of energy on persuasive, heart-wrenching, heart-nabbing, like narrative. So that was another way to get people to be like, oh, I can't do that. Why do I feel different when I'm out of at your talks? Wait, what's happening? Why do I understand these people? Sizzle reels help, videos help, making people see people, getting data they can't possibly have access to. Yeah, I think we're out of time, but we'll stay and we'll talk with you. We'll hang out, yeah. But thank you so much, everybody.